Wow, live. Oh my goodness. Never done this on 2 platforms. Oh my god, there are people there. Hello, Instagram. Hello, Instagram, and also YouTube. Trying to do both at once. Wow. Hello, everybody. Wave. Can you hear me? If anyone could be willing, just, say that you can hear me or not. That'd be really helpful as I open the door for my cat. Go in there, Moosh. What's in there? Anyone hear me? Anyone? Yes. Alicia. Yes. Beautiful. Philosopher. It's funny. I never call myself that. I don't think I'm a good enough thinker to embrace that title. But thank you. How is everybody? Cinema the Con. Cinema the Con. Gut glue left. So, for anyone tuning in, this is just a very arrogant way to say thank you for those who contributed to my little cat's GoFundMe. I know people sometimes request Q&As, so I thought that this would be a good way to, try to, return the favor, even if it's just about, doesn't do a whole lot. But if you have any questions, please let me know. I find I'm like with the Instagram one, the messages are kind of hard to keep track of. Whereas on YouTube, hi Flavian, the messages stay here. I don't know if there's a way to, because I see the messages for like a millisecond on Instagram and then they're gone, which is not always easy. Being with God and be happy. Amazing. Zilly? It's funny. Her name is actually Godzilla. It was kind of, I mean, this is just going to reflect poorly on me. I didn't want any animals, and my partner really wanted cats. And I said, okay, under one condition, I get to name the cat. And so I wanted to name the cat Godzilla. And it was ironic because she's like really small. Um, it'd be ironic for any cat, but she's especially small. And then it just went from Godzilla to Zilly, and it just kind of worked. It really suits her, I think. From YouTube, hi, kind of new here. If I'm not mistaken, I haven't seen any videos on Lacan by you. You explain stuff so smoothly. It would be great help. Thanks again. I have a couple of videos on Lacan. I think I have one on the mirror stage alone. I also had a friend on, Ben, to cover his text, L'étourdi, which is a French word for like dizzy. And but otherwise, no, I haven't covered a lot of Lacan because, to be totally honest, I'm not comfortable with my knowledge of Lacan. I would just be a little bit, I would embarrass myself, I think, because when I cover texts, I really try to make sure I know what I'm talking about to the best of my ability. I still get things wrong sometimes, but I really try to look at this secondary research around it and other popular articles and ideas to grapple with it. But with Lacan, I haven't gotten comfortable enough yet. Hello, Instagram. This is the first time I've gone live on Instagram. I'm probably going to knock over the phone comments I missed. So where is everybody from? All five of you on Instagram. Is it worth going to grad school if I'm passionate about philosophy? What is the difference between undergraduate philosophy and a master's program? It's hard to say. It depends what kind of philosophy you're into. Most philosophy programs, grad school programs, I don't know where you are, but if you're in Canada or the US, most philosophy grad school programs are going to be more analytically focused, which I know is not always what people are looking for. If that is what you're looking for, then why not? As far as my advice goes, um, I think that there's a lot of nuance to this. I think that nobody has a good answer for anyone. I mean, it's your life, and you have to think about it for yourself and assess your own situation. But I tend to really advocate you pursue master's degrees. If it's a topic you're interested in, I really think that's a good idea. Um, with doctorates, on the other hand, I'm a little bit more. I think that there's more to consider. You consider how much time you want to spend. You want to consider what prospects will give you a candidate, because it's hard. It's hard to provide for yourself. It's hard to sustain yourself. Western undergrad. Wow, Blair, that's amazing. What do you study at Western? I went to Western. I went to Western for 7 years, technically. I did all my grad school at Western. Go Western. Anyone else chiming in about any other academics around? If you have any opinions, put them in the chat. I'm sure people would like to read them. Speaking of academic philosophy, what are your general research interests? I study conspiracy theories. That's kind of my research stuff. Most of this philosophy stuff I cover has nothing to do with my academic pursuits. These are two very different worlds for me. Yeah, I just happen to be really interested in philosophy. It's given me a lot of tools in intellectual and academic um, toolkit to understand social, political, cultural events and phenomena, and I apply some of it to conspiracy theories. Uh, Philosophy and economics, getting more involved with the faculty there. I have no idea. I don't know the philosophy faculty at Western at all. I didn't. When I was at Western, I was in the master's theory and criticism program, which is not a philosophy program. The philosophy program at Western is very rigorously analytic. It's really good. It's a very, very good philosophy program. It's just not. It's not my wheelhouse. Um, But yeah, you're an undergrad. Just take this time, try to read as much as you can, understand as much as you can. Don't think you have to be like networking already. I mean, the more people you know, obviously the better. But yeah, what do you think distinctive difference between Western and Eastern thinking? I can't possibly answer that. I don't know what Western thought is. I don't know what Eastern thought is. I don't know how to differentiate them. Um, that is a very big question. Accelerationism. I assume that's referring to Nick Land. Um, it's not something I really subscribe to. I'm much more. I really take from Baudrillard in a lot of ways here, where Baudrillard it would quickly be like, well, isn't this just like more capitalism? We're just going to accelerate it to some kind of an endpoint, but we don't know what that endpoint is. And if it's just going to mean more harm. Accelerationism is harm acceleration, which often means mostly affecting disabled people, people who've been historically the most economically exploited. Um, mostly people of color, people in the global south, et cetera. So any calls for acceleration, will just mean more harm to these communities. Wittgenstein, I'd love to cover Wittgenstein. I will at some point. I really would. I've been meaning to do that, but I'll get there. Uh, from YouTube, I've been watching your channel for a while. I'm curious about Philosophy Academy acquire their budget and how philosophy research is funded in general. Yeah, I mean it's different everywhere. You got to hope for some government funding. some institutional funding if you're lucky, but it tends to be smaller. It depends from country to country too. You can get some funds from some, there are some private organizations. It's good looking into like philosophy organizations and stuff. Sometimes they have funding, um, but it's in like Canada, most graduate students really rely upon SSHRC. For those of you in Canada, you probably know, but SSHRC is the Social Science Humanities Research Council, and they supply a lot of funding for graduate students. Yeah. Uh, I prefer calling white people as colorless. Um, I guess that's a line of thought. I understand the impetus behind this. I think that part of one of the trickeries of white supremacy has been rendering whiteness transparent, as though it's not, as you say, it's not a color, when in fact it really is. And I think that, there's some very interesting legitimate calls to open not just like, for example, Black studies departments in colleges, but also white studies departments. And the reason for that is to like understand how whiteness operates. The same with like masculinity, where it often, because it assumes and holds a position of power, it goes unrecognized. So when we think of race, whiteness isn't often the primary image conjured up in one's mind. When you think of sexual orientation, straightness isn't like the idea because it's the naturalized norm, and so it doesn't even get recognized as such, and so it can permeate. And then anyone who falls outside of it can be further institutionalized, can be further um, discriminated against, can be seen as being outside of the norm. So I mean that's how I think about it. Where did my tunes go? I had tunes. Don't worry, I won't make any of you listen to my tunes. You would probably hate them. Looking at white people as raceless implies a kind of neutrality that insinuates superiority. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I'm trying to say. It's exactly what I'm trying to say, is the whiteness doesn't have its own history and not even the history of whiteness it's obviously a very long history. Many people who are now would be naively clumped under the banner of whiteness historically. So just some very easy examples like Greek people, like Irish people, who haven't historically been Jews, been associated with whiteness, who, with the advent of kind of scientific race-based thinking, introduced a kind of homogenizing effect of white. Very interesting. What do you think of the concept of nihilism in Heidegger? You'd have to say more. Is Heidegger a nihilist? I don't really know. Sound is a little bad. Wait, YouTube, I'm sorry. I know it's wrong. Oh, I'll fix it. 1 second. It means I can't listen to my tunes, I think. Give me 1 second. I got you, YouTube. Don't you worry. Um, YouTube, stupid headphones, running everything. Um, Sorry if there is some comment or question. Any philosophy exam 2/8, any tips, 4 units on Nietzsche and suffering, monism versus dualism, mind body problem, and applying moral theory with totalitarianism. Any tips? I have no idea what's going to be on the exam. Nietzsche and suffering. I don't know. Nietzsche glorifies. Um, there's that famous, you know, phrase: "As the body suffers, the spirit flowers." I think in part Nietzsche really embraces that. Monism versus dualism. Do You do your thing there. Mind body problem. Does consciousness begin? The mind, the body end? These things can we come up with transcendental principles of the body as we claim to be able to, hard to say? Utilitarianism versus Kant. Utilitarianism is just essentially the idea, you know, you buy for the greater good and aim for maximizing happiness. But this can translate to treating people's needs where it's like if we, a small group of people suffer, but it makes the whole world better, then that's okay. Whereas Kant says you can't treat anybody as a means to an end. You have to respect everybody in their mentality as a human being, which I think should extend to all of you. And you can't overstep the boundaries of your rights as a living being. So utilitarianism and Kant is really blah, 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 blah. Um, feel like Baudrillard sporadically, wish it been more sporadically, as they were much more extensive. It's funny you said, I've been rereading some Baudrillard actually. Funny coincidence. I'm going to be probably teaching some Baudrillard in my teaching again a little bit in the winter. But yeah, Baudrillard's great. I have to go back and probably recover some of the older texts. 'Cause Baudrillard is probably one of the most misunderstood of the French French philosophers. Baudrillard is like everybody gets Baudrillard wrong in like such an ironic way. You get him wrong in exactly the way he says, "Do not get me wrong." Philosophy is a principal guideline or some kind of standard for choosing a public research. I think everyone's different. Whoever speaks to you. Maybe you really like Kant, you want to write a thousand dissertation, thousand, 10,000, maybe million dissertation on the first critique, whatever floats your boat. We disconnected. Why have we disconnected so much with each other as humans? Have we? Are we implying that once we were not disconnected? I think that that's tough claim to make because I don't know. How do you measure connectedness? It's a tricky thing. Um, yeah, Nietzsche and postmodernism. Nietzsche very clearly is like a precursor to what we know as "quote unquote" postmodernism, which is a term you'll never hear me use in any kind of serious way. Um, but Nietzsche set the stage for that. I think that maybe the text that most comfortably aligns with this idea is his Truth and Lying in a Non-Moral Sense, which if no one's read it, or if any of you haven't read it, I really recommend it. You can find it online. It's like 10 pages. It's a short essay in which he talks about um, the way in which humans confronted with their own ignorance. So we don't know why we exist. We don't know the universe. We don't know what anything is really. Why is there something rather than nothing, et cetera, et cetera. Nietzsche says that to make us feel better about this, we develop language in order to give us illusions of acquiring truth. Heidegger's body of work, particularly his four Nietzsche volumes, refer to nihilism as the ultimate problem for time equals the time of world darkening. Yeah, I haven't read those yet, so I can't really speak to them very comfortably. Still sound issues on YouTube. Oh no, I'm so sorry to hear that. It's tragic. It's weird. Sorry, folks. On YouTube. Normally it's not much of an issue. Let's see. Improve this. Here. I think Heidegger's fascist turn is an attempt to cope and lead from the mean, pretending to get fast forward through the revaluation of values. I think that that's fair. Um, Heidegger was confronting like uh, his own anti-Semitism, but also like real material challenges facing German society. And of course, the easy answer to that is like, well, we need values. And this is what I think we're seeing this play out in a lot of different places as well. This effort to try to like find an identity. There's this great play written. It was turned into a movie. It's Italian. It's called Six Characters in Search of an Author. Apparently, Mussolini loved it. And essentially, the play is about six characters who appear on I don't know if it's a film set or a play, and they're like looking for meaning. They're like, why are we here? They're looking for a director. And essentially, the idea, and hence why fascists like it, was that it essentially makes it so that people find their sense of self in their being given an authority figure, which is like very much a fascist fantasy. So people want to control. I'm just using the term fascism loosely here. Um, yeah, but I think that that's a good thing. I mean, it's especially when you consider like the influence of capitalism and the effort to extract as many resources as possible, the effort to continually undermine people's abilities to provide for themselves, to work together to provide for themselves in the communities. I think that people are going to feel less connected, to go back to that other comment. And as a result, they're going to feel like they need a way to belong. Um, and belonging, I think, takes a very long time. And when quick answers are offered, then you get fascism, the extreme, Christian nationalism, and you get the easy answers, easy fixes, or you get people just united on people. Do you think any similarities between Nietzsche's Übermensch and P&G's body without organs, a form of absolute immanence? No. No, not for Deleuze and Guattari. I don't think they would say that. Um, because Deleuze and Guattari are very clear that the body without organs is like an attainable feat. It's like something embedded is within our possibility, but it is also the impetus behind us having possibility at all. Whereas the Ubermensch is a very specific kind of historical figure that embodies a certain, like many different traits and qualities that Nietzsche approves of. Yeah, you two people. I'm sorry that the sound is not great. I'm still fiddling with it. Normally, unplugging the mic improves it. Are you familiar with La Boétie? La Boétie. What's your take on his? I have never read La Boétie. Right? Thanks. Vincenzo. Um, more comments there. Wow, where's everyone from? There's like 15 of you now. Wow, where is everybody? Love to know. New Orleans. Cool. Columbus. Ooh, Ohio State. Vietnam. Wow, I'd love to go. Really, everywhere but France. Yeah, I've never heard of that movie. It looks bad on me. Uh, From the OC, Orange County? Is that the OC? Back back when I used to live in California? Oh, a day like this, I miss California. At least the sun's out. Poland, I've never been. I'd love to go to Poland. Wow, very cool. Very cool. Oh, did that improve on? No, I don't think it did. Had you? Yep, UCI. Cool. Atlanta, Georgia. What part of Atlanta, Georgia? I like Atlanta. Atlanta's fun. Australia, what part? Any thoughts about feminist theories, feminist schools? Uh, um, yeah, like reputable ones. I mean, feminist theories. I tend to really like a lot of them, and I think that a lot of the discussions around feminist circles are really interesting, and they're some of the most incisive and insightful, like sociocultural and philosophical analyses I tend to come from feminists that really pull me in. But good ones, I don't know. Like we were talking about Western before. Western's got a decent gender studies program that I like in Western Ontario, but there's probably more reputable ones. I don't know which the best ones are. Obviously, you probably find good stuff in the U.S., but I'm not as familiar. Um, Australia, Newfoundland, or Newfoundland. Yeah, are there people like that like Newfoundland? I find the Newfoundland thing is so funny. There's like Mikey Downs does a lot of, and the Theory Underground people like Newfoundland a lot. Um, which is interesting. I mean, Nick Land is just someone who was relevant for like 7 or 8 minutes in the late '90s, early 2000s. He wrote the Bang Community, um, but he didn't. I mean, he maintain his relevance, which is more maybe a sign of degradation of academia than it is any kind of condemnation. Yeah, happy to hear it, May, from Algeria. Amazing. Love to visit. Comparative lit at Western. Uh, yeah, happy to hear it. What's your thoughts on Durkheim's suicide theory? Um, it's quite outdated. I mean, it's quite outdated. There are a lot of different thoughts that have emerged about it. I mean, like for example, like Alexandre Papi, who's at the University of Ottawa. I did an interview with him on his book, Undoing Suicidism, which I would recommend if you're interested in studies of suicide. Um, but Durkheim like approaches suicide first and foremost as a problem that should be understood, which is interesting. And that he makes the case that this opening up into studying what suicide is implies already a kind of judgment that is ableist. It assumes that suicidal people are like ill, which isn't to say that some suicidal people wouldn't identify as such, uh, but it doesn't. It just already belongs to a wavelength of disavowal, um, pathologization, and probably institutionalization. So there's a lot to really unpack there. Yeah, Nickland acceleration. That's funny. Yeah, cool. I hope that you get a big turnout. What's the name of your podcast? It's called Theory and Philosophy. India. Cool. Philosophical inquiry of quantum physics. It'd be really cool. I don't, um, I don't know anything about quantum physics. I don't know anything about quantum physics. I don't know about anything really. I, I don't know much. Quantum physics, tiny things. The only thing I would say is that I think that there are certain strands of philosophical thought that thinks that we're going to arrive at like a deeper philosophical truth by going through various scientific observations, various scientific processes, which might be the case, but I think that philosophy doesn't necessarily need that. I think, but that's just me. But I think there's a lot more to be said, obviously, I don't know anything about it. You read Land in opposition to Heidegger. Land is one of the most emphatically pro-nihilist philosophers willing to embrace everything Heidegger was afraid of. I mean, you let me know. You do a series on Lacan. It's funny you say it. I addressed that earlier. I haven't covered much Lacan because I've never really felt like I know Lacan well. So, yeah. Girard? Yeah, I like Girard. Girard got the stuff on like, oh, does he write on suicide as well? I know that he has. There was a little period when I was kind of interested in Girard when I was in grad school, but I don't really remember the details. Um, suicide can also be an act of hope. I don't. I mean, it can be anything, right? I mean, it could be whatever you want it to be. I don't think that we need to like give it a certain identity to be like this is what it is. Hope. Because I don't know. In a lot of cases, it could be an absolute. It can be inspired by absolute stress and lack of hope. You know, because I don't know. India as well, Greek, cool, very cool. Hello, everyone. Do you think if you did more drugs like this CCRU, it would make you a better philosopher? I don't know what CCRU is. Oh yeah. What is the CCRU? Oh, oh, Warwick. Everything goes back to Warwick. It's just cool. I keep getting stuff with it. It's funny. Drugs will make you a better thinker. Deleuze and Guattari write about that a bit. They're like, yeah, that is like the biggest lie you could ever tell yourself is thinking that drugs will make you a better thinker. They don't agree and not to agree. You know, again, I think that for some people it might be like, it might be the way to help them think. Yeah, sorry about the audio YouTube. I don't know what the deal with that is. Hopefully next time it'll be better. Am I interested in theology, like the study of religion? Yeah, but not like seriously. I don't have enough time in the world to study that seriously. I have a faint interest in it. I mean, I just kind of like to passively consume other media on it. Like for those of you who don't know, like Dan McClellan, who does a lot of Instagram reels, other short form video content, the Bible and stuff. I find that stuff very interesting. I don't know a lot about it though. Would philosophy scholars provide numerical data to support their arguments when they present their studies? I think a lot of the time they're expected to. This is one of the ways in which they can see other industrial interests. Um, do you find Greek philosophy or German philosophy the most complex? German philosophy is way more complex. I assume, I assume we're talking about like German idealism. Um, but yeah, I find the Germans a lot more complicated. Alice Miller. Alice Miller. Is that the psychologist? I don't really know much about Alice Miller. Wow. Why it's embracing what the mind could become. Is that about drugs? Drugs, what the mind could become? I don't know. I think that exposing yourself to different ideas, to exposing yourself to different people's experiences and different people's lived knowledge and their thought through knowledge is the way to hone the mind and to craft a sense of self and its relationship to thought. Um, I think that I think that drugs can give you like moments of clarity, but when we're talking about the enterprise of philosophical inquiry, it takes a lot more uh, engagement consistently with a set of ideas and with thought in a consistent um, like sober way. I think, but obviously you can get breakthroughs with you know with drugs, but to each their own. As dark psychology, cool. Dark psychology. Thanks, Seven Pence. On it, this is like doing this on Reels is so like God. Dark psychology in big 2025. Psychology, psychology, psychology. Come on, Instagram. Y'all don't have more questions. Deleuze and Guattari's ideas about geophilosophy. It's a unit in my degree. Um, no, not through those terms. Where would the best place to where would they write about that the most? For some reason, I'm thinking what is philosophy is the place where they write about that, but I might be misremembering. Um, yeah, no, I don't know a whole lot about it. Oh yeah, they did. What is philosophy? Yeah, see, I know what I'm talking about. Um, yeah, I don't. What is philosophy is a book I haven't covered yet. I've read about a third of it. I was doing this reading club a few years ago, um, where we were reading it and then we just kind of fell off. But I'm probably going to go back and read it and cover it at some point. Um, yeah, they would touch on the ideas in A Thousand Plateaus for sure. I mean, a lot of their stuff, they're thinking about the earth and early archaeology and all that was very relevant. Itinerant metallurgy. Hi from Austria. Cool. Is there a relatively clear and definitive way to reject a philosophical position, or is a philosophical position dead only when no one buys it, and vice versa? No, I think there are ways to reject a philosophical position. It's happened a lot. I mean, Kant Kant's three critiques are a rejection of idealism. More or less, like certain strands of idealism, that I think he does a really good job at doing and pretty much rendering obsolete Descartes, I think. But and the same with like Karl Marx and his critiques of Ricardo. You there are ways through philosophical inquiry, through debate, through argument that you can undermine another philosophical project. I think it's important to be kind of wary of the ways that this has been appropriated, where you have the whole like Jubilee thing and it's all about debate, debate, debate. We've essentially cultivated a culture of debate in order not to have a culture of change, or a culture of where we actually hold like leaders accountable, where we're stuck doing these stupid debates between like clowns. Um, I think, but there are ways for sure. It takes, you got to write books to do it a lot of the time, or pamphlets. Miss any questions here? God, it's so quick. What's your take on trans exclusionary radical feminists, not from an empathetic, but from a theoretical point of view? Um, I think that I don't have any agreements with them or anything, but not from an empathetic, but from a theoretical point of view. Yeah, I just don't think it's feminism. I mean, I know that that's a rough thing to say. I just don't think it's feminism. I don't think that a feminism can really be feminism if it's going to exclude people it doesn't it sees as not being part of its ranks, which is not very feminist. I mean, I leave it to the secret male fraternal ordered societies to do that kind of stuff. I think feminism is much better than that. And so radical TERFs, trans exclusionary radical feminists, they're neither radical nor are they feminists, I think, which is, again, I mean, it's very rough, but that's what I think. Talking about Heidegger, I try, but it's quite difficult. Yeah, Heidegger's tough. I hope that I covered on my channel. I've covered being in time and the question concerning technology. I don't think I've done any other Heidegger. I haven't done Heidegger on Kant or Heidegger on Nietzsche. I don't think I've done maybe one little episode on Heidegger's critique of Kant. Um, but yeah, I hope that you find it useful. Yeah, the audio thing on YouTube. Good luck with the GoFundMe. Thanks, Ducks Y. Um, it's been quite successful. I've been very happy with everyone's support. It's been really great, really helpful, especially now I'm don't not working, so it helps. Which philosophical thoughts approach on death and letting go that you find close to your heart and at ease and want to settle down with? Yeah, it's a tough question. I mean, the thing is, that's the thing about death is that it can never be understood. So it's hard to find a text or an idea that actually settles anxieties about death. And I think that it's always going to evade any kind of easy way to allay those feelings. Maybe counterintuitively, I found Kant to be really comforting in a lot of cases. But yeah, I mean, this is kind of the seductive element of religions that claim to explain what death is, to give people a kind of comfort, because otherwise, how do you make sense of it? Um, but if you have any suggestions or anything that works for you, I mean, please put it in the chat. I'm sure others would be interested in. Very happy to hear it. Always Zoe. Foucault's idea of power seems too encompassing and leaves no space for radical change. It seems like what it offers is just resistance at certain points, like a tug of war. I'm missing something. No, I think that that's exactly what it is. And I think well, Foucault, like for example, Foucault looks at a lot of different revolutionary movements and a lot of different like popular struggles and resistance movements, including like the peasant revolts in Europe, um, to show that like people will be driven to resist things for many different reasons, and resistance is going to be motivated by many different things. It's going to take different forms. It's going to respond to um, different imperatives. So many different ways of thinking about it. And so Foucault is often given this kind of bad rap because he's not suggesting as though there's like the template through which to or with which to understand how popular social movements should go, like we find in Marxist analysis, for example, where there's a much clearer division between the oppressors and the oppressed, which I mean, Marx is right, totally. But there are so many other people that don't fall so neatly under that rubric or that umbrella that endure exploitation and will then meet the challenges of that exploitation in various ways, not necessarily by a proletarian unified struggle, but maybe through maybe a woman's struggle, you know, because we can't deny that the history of economic exploitation under capitalism is very real, but we also can't deny the reality of exploiting women and for all of the labor that women historically do in the home to community to providing for our world in very meaningful ways, and they aren't compensated for it. And so this is a kind of exploitation that doesn't map onto a wage labor exploitation, and so they've orchestrated different kinds of resistances. And I think that Foucault thinks about these kinds of things in those ways. um, Yeah, Kant has a cool notion of beingness that places humans without really trying as hard as Kant wanted. I dislike Kant's view of wills and notions of freedom immensely, though. Yeah, you should say more. If life has an inherent purpose, why are some lives so brief, like some newly born babies die in young people? What's your take on the purpose of life? Well, firstly, I don't equate um, longevity of life with purpose of life. I think that and Baudrillard writes about this a lot in really interesting ways, is like Baudrillard says that, I mean, he's being hyperbolic, but Baudrillard says that one of the first exclusions to have been undertaken in our society has been the exclusion of death in the West. And he talks about the ways in which we really panic about death, where we don't have kind of a real meaning towards it through thousands of years of tradition to foster a connection to the act of dying, to our ancestors, to everything like this. We kind of just throw people who are aging into institutions where someone else will take care of them. We don't have to think about them. Then they die, and then we don't think about them again. Or we think about them on an individual level, not in like a community caring, um, you know, almost a worshiping way. Um, and so Baudrillard writes that like we've developed a real fear of death, and we've tried to like not think about it at all. And so in effect, what we've done is tried to elongate life as much as possible. We treat life like a lemon and just try to squeeze as much out of it as we can. Um, and that is what we come to associate with having a good life. And people often cite this. We cite things like life expectancy as though that is inherently a good thing, which I'm not saying it isn't. Obviously, everyone wants to, live as long as you're able to live, of course. Um, but that is not actually a metric of what makes a good life. Instead, you look at things like happiness, you look at things like how people are provided for, etc. But I don't know. Is there a purpose to life? I mean, who knows? This is something that we'll never have the answer to, and that's one of the beautiful things about it, is that it's something I think on we kind of all know that we don't have an answer to, at least at one that we can all transcendentally accept. But nevertheless, we truck on, and that is kind of the amazing thing, kind of the contradiction we can always live in, and keep working through, which might itself be our purpose. Recently, I'm into some Bayo. Akko Malafi talk about posthumanism on death. Death is impossible. They mentioned Derrida and also the idea of transcorporeality from posthumanist thinkers. That's really interesting. I don't know a lot about it. You should say more. Um, you got banned from a Foucault Discord. That's funny. I mean, that doesn't sound very Foucauldian. It sounds like that's exactly what Foucault would critique. I mean, wasn't that for the exclude the quote unquote mad? They send them on the Stultifera Nabis, the ship of fools, out to the ocean. You've been cast out to the ocean. My cat's okay. I mean, I would show you, but she's like pretty gnarly surgery. Like they had to remove her kidney. Yes, that stuff kind of spooks me. It kind of gives me the goosebumps. And so her whole like abdomen that's where her stitches are, and that's where the incision was. So we've had to just kind of like lock her up in the bathroom for a few days, so she can't like be jumping around or running around or anything. Now she's in the bedroom, just like sitting in a um, her cat bed, but she's doing okay. Were you holding hope the Blue Jays would win? No, I'm a Dodgers fan. I lived in LA for 2 years. Come on. I got my Dodgers shirt. Look. I should have been wearing this. I wasn't doing it right. Look. Oops. Wow, that could have been bad. Look, come on. The Blue Jays. Why? You think I'm supposed to like Toronto? Have you not read who wrote Imagine Communities? Who's that guy? Like the idea that because we're both in the same country, we have to share like values. No, I mean whatever. That would have been cool. I don't watch sports, so I don't know. Don't really know much about it. I went to see one Dodgers game when I was in LA. That was my my sport dose for 5 years. Last book you read? Last book I read was the Penguin History of Canada for research. Used to watching Vladdy G. I don't know who that is. Is that a YouTuber? Vladdy G. Sorry, maybe that's something I should know. It really close to the Buddhism philosophy on death and the idea about interbeing. Buddhism is a great way to feel better about death, to find comfort in it. Buddhism is great. Oh, Vladimir Guerrero played on the Blue Jays. Yeah, I don't. I mean, okay. I'm not a sports person at all. The only I watched when the Raptors. I play basketball. That's kind of the sport I play besides running. And so I watched when the Raptors were doing well when they won the thing a few years ago. I watched a few of those playoff games. Yeah, Bakhtin, or is he out of your scope? I would get into Bakhtin. I have some Bakhtin on my bookshelf. I'm gonna get there at some point, but I'm like, with what time? When I was in my 20s, I had a lot more time to just read. But life goes on. People forget the role of the form in Buddhist metaphysics often. Yeah, I don't know anything about Buddhist thought or metaphysics or anything. Favorite filmmaker? Favorite filmmaker? I don't know. I like Kubrick's movies, but I've watched a lot of good stuff lately. I don't know. I've never really been versed enough in film to like know about authorship and know about like what the mark that a director really leaves on the craft. Which obviously all I'm showing you is that I'm an uncultured swine. But Yeah, I watched some good movies lately though. Like, one of the I watched, I just finished, La Jeune Marx, the so Young Marx. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it. Young Marx, pretty good. You know, it doesn't shy away from some of the more difficult, um, Marx's more difficult contributions to the study of political economy and critique of political economy. Uh, yeah, it's, we just watched that. I watched, what else did I watch? I watched Universal Language. That's a really good movie. It's a really good movie. Really, I don't think I understood it, but I really liked it. Um, Falcon Lake, I watched that. That's a kind of a horror movie, but it's actually good. Um, Horror teen romance thing. It's really good. Jason Hickel. Jason Hickel is like the Marxist type anti-Zionist guy, right? Jason Hickel. Or am I? Uh, yeah, yeah. I think I'm right about that. Yeah, he's fine. I don't know. You know, people ask me often on these things like what I think about people, and I hope I don't say that I'm a big fan of someone super problematic. I mean, I often don't really know as much as I should about other people, like other internet people. Economical anthropologist, yeah. I think I agree with some of the stuff, without knowing a whole lot of the details. No other questions, Instagram? Really? Wow. What are you all reading now? Reading 30. What are you reading from Lukash? Lukash. Lukash. Recently bought Charon's A Short History of Decay. Cool. I've never read it. Sure it's good though. War and Cinema. Cool. Theory of the novel. What is the theory of the novel? Anna Huang. What did, um, oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Anna Huang. Um, Rorty, theory of the novel, where he basically disowned it, but it got cool ideas. Cool. Nice. Philosophy of mind. What is the philosophy of mind? The philosophical fall? What is it? What is the philosophy of mind? The mind of philosophy. My thoughts on the theory of the third space. For those that aren't familiar, the theory of the third space is the idea that there should be spaces that, um, like you can go to with people that where you don't have to like spend money and that aren't work. You know, places that people can convene for free to be together. I think it's a great thing. Um, there are a lot of great programs running in like a lot of major cities. I know Montreal has some where you have people and organizations trying to develop urban infrastructure and urban architecture and spaces within cities that allow people to come together and do like strange things. So, like having little obstacle courses, that are just like kind of part of spaces. And there are some like considerations around accessibility, of course, like who would then get to be able to join these spaces, which is obviously an important thing to consider. But creating spaces in which people can come together where they don't have to spend money and it's not work, where people can talk, which is, it seems we're getting less and less of that, and as more and more people rely upon the internet to connect them, then what they're essentially entering into, despite everything that the internet can offer, they're entering into a mediated form of communication. And when any kind of communication is mediated, then there can be very easily corporate, political, governmental controls on what you're able to say, what things you're likely to be influenced by seeing, which is kind of the nature of algorithmic culture, in that it shows you, curates what you get to see and what you therefore get to know. Whereas when you just go out and meet with people, there aren't those kind of filters or the kind of mediated controlling over what you can know and say. Um, which isn't, I'm not pretending as though there aren't similar kinds of barriers when you meet people face to face. I mean, it would be totally naive to think that that's purely a like a pure encounter when it really, it isn't. Are you familiar with Jean Baudrillard's The Gulf War Didn't Take Place books? I am. Great books. In short, for anyone interested, during the Gulf War in the 90s, Baudrillard wrote three texts. I think I'll get the names right. It's like, la guerre de Golfe n'a pas lieu, la guerre de Golfe n'aura pas lieu. Is It's the Gulf War did not take place, the Gulf War isn't taking place, and the Gulf War will not take place. I think those are the three titles in which Baudrillard writes about the ways in which the war was kind of like, I mean, the first level analysis for him is like, was it really a war? When it's just an invasion. It's the same thing with Israel calling it the Gaza War, the Gaza War, the Gaza War. It's an invasion. It's an invasion to complete their centuries-long genocide of the Palestinians now in its most specific manifestation against Gazans, and of course, in intensifying ways against settlers, against people in the West Bank. Um, but yeah, so Baudrillard writes about that. He also writes about the ways in which that war was the first time there was introduced like the 24-hour news cycle, and this showed us that there was this kind of like Baudrillard talks about the ways in which, in order for a war to not happen, it needs to be happening all the time through this kind of media spectacle of continued. Uh, la guerre du Golfe n'a pas eu lieu. Yeah, that's it. Uh, yeah, and yeah, so Baudrillard writes, when something becomes like hyper visible, when it becomes extremely extremely visible, then it disappears. It loses all meaning. And he writes about this, I think, in a very prescient way. He was writing about this in the 80s and 90s, where he's like, look, if you're being bombarded with information, it becomes really difficult to know what's like an important thing to focus on. Like one of the things with that we're seeing differently with Gaza and Palestine is that there's just been like the people have done such great work in like keeping the tension and keeping the kind of media war going, so that it's not like that story is just replaced with another one. But this is also the Israeli strategy, in that they just commit atrocity after atrocity after atrocity after atrocity, and before you've understood what happened in the first one, they've already done 4,000 other ones, and then it's like this endless sequence. Uh, but yeah, the Baudrillard's texts are really great. I mean, it's looking back, I know that I certainly wouldn't agree with all of it now. I'm not sure if you could hear that, but there's someone singing outside. Uh, uh, maybe odd question. When do you read, and how often do you fit it into adult life? Do you have different kinds of reading, like serious theory versus light for pleasure reading with different roles? It's funny. I started to try to read um, for pleasure more often. I try to read a lot of French, for, like, pleasure, because I'm trying to improve my French, but, like, it's kinda like my day-to-day is reading, less so of it now because I'm spending a lot more time, like, trying to find ways to make a living. But, yeah, it's like I'll sometimes have a day where I'm like, "This is a day where I'm just gonna read," and then I just kind of, you know, lock in and just try to read for hours and hours and try to get, my way through a book that I can cover on the channel and stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's finding less and less time these days. Missed a comment. The belittling of humanities and social sciences in academic spaces, and henceforth its effects on the youth. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I think that, I mean, hot take. I think that college and university is wasted on the youth, and I just think about that for myself because, like, I wish I could go. I wish I could do an undergrad when I was like 25. You know, not when I was 18. You know, I just didn't think I was smart enough. Um, and how much more I could have gotten out of education if I was a little older. You know, I find that we're just too hard on kids, and we're like, "You gotta get the degree right away, get to school, get all the good grades," and then they show up and they're just like, "How do I get a good grade?" And I'm like, "That's not why you should be here." But there's other material conditions that really push that make that the case. Um, yeah. In what ways you don't agree with Jean? If you can name a few, I find his theories a good base to try to navigate today's world. Um, I don't like his views on gender. I think that in his critique of biological essentialism that some feminists in the 80s were adopting, he tried to offer a kind of like, um, non-essentialist binary thinking of gender relations, which is a total contradiction. And Sarah Ahmed writes a really good critique of him in, her first book called Differences That Matter. And each of her chapters are essentially a critique of a different strand of post-structuralist thought. So there's a chapter on Foucault. Is there a chapter on Foucault? I might be lying to you about that. There might not be one on Foucault, but there's a chapter on, like, Deleuze and Guattari. There's a chapter on Baudrillard where Sarah Ahmed's just like, "These are the problems." Um, Baudrillard is also Islamophobic. I mean, in some of his writings, he's pretty the stuff that he says about, I mean, about Palestinians, about, Muslim people, it's I think that he rehashes many of the Orientalist scripts to, like, he still is critiquing the West, but he's doing so by maintaining, um, by borrowing from legacies of Western superiority and Orientalist themes in order to mount these critiques, which only end up reinscribing, these kinds of oppressions than actually substantially undermining them or challenging them. Um, what's my niche now? I do conspiracy theories. That's my thing. That's what I study. That's what I read. That's what I try to write on now, um, which has been fun. I feel like it's the one area where I feel like I can kind of say something unique. you know, in the world of philosophy, I'm like, it's so hard to write something new. Um, I find, because so much has already been written. But I mean, that's also just me. I could just be saying more about myself than the field, but yeah. Kierkegaard deep down about the leap of faith and the redemption living the faithful life. um, yeah, I mean, Marwa, I hope I pronounced that right. I mean, I'm a fan of Baudrillard. I think there's a lot to take from Baudrillard's work. I just think that he's not above critique and criticism. What is your opinion about Kierkegaard? I'm not a big Kierkegaard fan. I don't buy the leap of faith. I don't buy the argument. I mean, it's interesting. Like, especially if if you're Christian, or if you're like, if you really hold on to the Bible as not necessarily being true in itself, but speaking a certain kind of truth, then I think that Kierkegaard offers a lot. I'm being vague. Let me explain what I mean. Like, if you look at the Bible and you look at the story of the Garden of Eden, it's a story about the anxiety of knowledge in part. It's a story about sexism too, but it's a story about the anxiety of knowledge, and what happens when humans acquire knowledge, because that's essentially the whole thing. They take from the tree of knowledge, and I think that that story does tell a truth about the human experience, where there was a moment, it seems, like we started to develop a faculty that is kind of related to, yet is separate from other animals, in the way that we do consciousness, which is hard to define without falling into just anthropocentrism or lionizing the human mind as being the superior kind of mind, which is something that's obviously very important to be wary of. Um, but it's hard not to think that there's something different. And the Bible or other explanations for the dawn of humanity kind of explain this anxiety of the moment that humans became detached from their own world. And as a result, it produces in people a kind of anxiety. And this is something that the psychoanalysts picked up on, that Nietzsche picked up on, where they're like, look, with language, what we've effectively done is allowed us to move away from the world. With tools, we've allowed us not necessarily to just be responding to stimulation from the world, but as human beings, we are the creatures that can look upon circumstance, that can look upon barriers and say, what are we going to do about that? What are we going to do about that? That's a problem. Um, but with this comes this, like, well, what does it mean? Suddenly we have the opportunity to ask questions. And when we ask questions, we inevitably arrive at the most brutal of the questions. Is like, why are we here? What is this about? What is it for? And so Kierkegaard talks about the moment of acquiring knowledge in the garden, and then the subsequent anxiety that we feel as a result for generations and generations up till now. Uh, and I think that he's really onto something, and I think that there are a lot of really good insights. I can't really get around his the Christianity just really influences him. Like Kierkegaard read Kant and Hegel. If you read one of his books, it's either The Concept of Anxiety or The Sickness Unto Death. Like in the beginning, one of the first pages, he's like, yeah, the problem with Kant and Hegel is they weren't Christian enough. Which is wild, because if you read Hegel, it's like Hegel's like, yes, we've made it as a society, as a proper, like, Christianity is the way to kind of realize absolute spirit. It is the culmination of absolute spirit. Um, and for Kierkegaard to be like they aren't religious enough is wild. So I mean, I struggle with Kierkegaard, but there's obviously some very good insight to be taken from there. Comments. Um, Conspiracy theories. I was just trying in my dissertation. I don't think it was very good, but I was just trying to kind of parse out some of the, and I was finding fault with like two big strands of conspiracy theory research, where there's a strand of thought that's like, well, there's a few different strands. One, there's a big strand of thought that's like conspiracy theories are always like a problem and need to be addressed. Another strand is like, no, no, no. Conspiracy theories are actually like a sign of healthy democracy and people really engaging in the marketplace of ideas and exchange and all that. Then there's another strand of thought that says like, whoa, 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 let's pump the brakes on this. Like, what even is a conspiracy theory? When I say that word or that term, conspiracy theory, probably a bunch of specific ideas come in your mind, like the moon landing, like 9/11, like aliens, like whatever. These are the popular ones, which is already very interesting because historically, conspiracy theories have not looked like that. Historically, conspiracy theories have been weapons of states in order to justify intensified defenses and violences, defenses of the people they identify with, and further attacks against people they don't identify with. Conspiracy theories have long been used in those ways. But in the mid 20th century, suddenly conspiracy theories became a problem for these same people. Suddenly, you have states like Canada taking on these very distinct anti-extremist, anti-intellectual approaches, which happen to also go after conspiracy theories as being a sign of kind of intellectual degradation. But that's ironic because the Canadian state has historically used conspiracy theories to justify stealing Indigenous people's land, like and stealing their resources and committing genocide against Indigenous peoples and communities. Israel does it all the time too. I mean, Israel is a conspiracy theory state. Like they're one of the biggest confusing things to me about conspiracy theory research is that pretty much anywhere you study it, like it is treated as though it is the primary tool against Jews. And indeed, the history of anti-Semitic conspiracy theories can't be ignored. Like it is it's an legitimate thing. But for some reason, we haven't recognized yet the nature of Islamophobic conspiracy theories, which are I would hazard way more prominent and way more normalized. And so I think that there's ideas about conspiracy theories being like these legitimate examples of democratic engagement. And then you have these other approaches that are like, oh well, what really is a conspiracy theory? We have to. I'm like, well, no, we can actually find a middle ground here and recognize the ways in which they are somewhat tangible things and have these histories really going against the historically marginalized folks and everything. Ugh, my rambling pitch. Winnicott, yeah, Winnicott's great. Winnicott is a big figure for yeah, Alison Beck. I actually have it right here. Alison Bechdel. Um, if you read Alison Bechdel wrote Fun Home. Yeah, Fun Home. But she also wrote this. It's called Are You My Mother? It's another comic. It's very good, but she cites Winnicott a lot, because she's really interested in Winnicott, interested in Freud as well, but Winnicott's like childhood theories, everything like that. Winnicott's cool. Yeah. What do you think of leftists like Chipper who are very against id Paul? I have no idea what any of these words are. What do you think of it? Is that identity politics? Id Paul. Um, I don't care about identity politics. I care about corporate billionaires and the capitalist class. Identity politics. I don't care. Like anyone who gets upset about that, I'm like, is that your priority, not the arms manufacturers? Really? You're more upset about identity politics than like bravo. You really identified the enemy here. Rorty's neo-pragmatism, I'm not familiar enough, unfortunately. Oh God, Instagram's the worst. Best intro text for understanding the history of conspiracy theories and specifically how states have used them to increase control, like you mentioned. There's a um, yeah, there's a good one. There's a writer named Pagan who wrote what's the name of the article? It's a good intro. It's Victoria Pagan. I hope I pronounced that right. Toward a model for conspiracy theory for ancient Rome, of conspiracy theory for ancient Rome. But this has been has not really a studied thing. There's a lot of stuff to explore here. Um, a lot of stuff to explore because historically the people who have written history have been the people in power. And so and this is something that Pagan touches on in their article is to say that like it's really hard to study conspiracy theories historically because we don't have records of everyday people. Like for all we know, everybody was a conspiracy theorist. Like every farmhand to every like artisan, and they're all, maybe that's all they were talking about was various conspiracies, but we just don't know. And it's one of the problems of historiography and the study of the history. But That's a good one. If, uh, what are other good ones? At the beginning, there's Patricia Turner's I heard it through the grapevine, where she writes about I mean, this is kind of related, it's kinda not, where she writes about urban legend and rumor within Black communities in the US, but tracing it to, like, West African, um, types, like epistemologies and ways of knowing the world, and knowledge. So that's a good one too. Uh, yeah, there's probably other good ones. I mean, it's largely untapped. I mean, this is something I'm trying to write about a little bit, but, yeah, natalism, like, in general, how mind functioning to create these theories? I couldn't tell you that. I haven't created a lot of good theories. I don't know how people do it. This is what, Deleuze and Guattari write about in What is Philosophy? They write that the philosophy is the act of creating concepts, like, essentially creating ideas. They use the term concepts, um, which is fascinating. It's fascinating, and it's something I'm not really good at because it takes creativity. I'm not a particularly creative person. This is why I think that I'm to give myself a little credit, I'm the thing I'm good at doing is reciting other people's ideas, not necessarily coming up with my own. But maybe one day. So, what are your views on Kafka, and is it healthy to actually follow him in present times? Sure. I don't know. How I looked at Chomsky's theories of generative grammar, sorry. Do you think they might shed some light on the questions Kierkegaard asked? No. No. Like, Chomsky is describing me I don't know, maybe, but I think that Kierkegaard's after something a little bit deeper than any, scientific explanation can provide. Um, but Chomsky's, I mean, super interesting stuff. What are your views on Kafka again? Simone de Beauvoir, is there anything you criticize about the second sex? No. I mean, like, no. It's because I haven't read it in its entirety yet, but I, plan to. It's one on my bookshelf. Um, what do you think about postmodernism? Is it life denying? No. Well, we'd have to first agree on what we think postmodernism is. Um, and certainly not life denying. If we are to come up with a definition, it's actually I would say life affirming. If I know that that might seem a little bit um, paradoxical, but I find it life affirming. I actually find the alternatives to be quite life denying. Like, Jordan Peterson, he based much of his whatever he was doing on critiques of postmodernism, just ended up offering a life denying, um, like, what's what does Nietzsche write about with the priest? Oh my God. Starts with an E. Does it start with an E? Like the person who just like whips themselves to experience pain and they think that that's what like makes a good life. Like the more you suffer. Um, oh, that's gonna bother me. I gotta look it up. Oh, Nietzsche. It's not ecstatic. Oh, aesthetic. Ascetic priest, um, which I think is the most life denying. I mean, I'm very much on Nietzsche's wavelength here, very much life denying, and that's embraced by people like Peterson that think that you have to discipline yourself. Um, and I think the same thing goes against like postmodernism in general, whatever it is. Sorry, there was a question. Is life a social construct? Um, Is life a social construct? Part of it is, certainly. Are there some parts of it that are universal? Yes, in that we all universally have experiences of a social construct. Even if life is a social construct, we are implying as though we have a faculty, like there's something within us that is capable of internalizing this construct, which isn't just implied with existence. Like there's something there that's universal. And this is something that Heidegger talks about. In Being in Time, Heidegger writes about being thrown in, or like the specific term is like throwing in or thrown in, where he talks about like that when we are born and when we exist, we take in a world and we become part of it. We give to it, it gives to us. And with this is shown that it's part of our, like, dare I say, our DNA, which is, I mean, I'm not trying to revert it to just like a biological explanation, but like there's something within us that makes social constructs possible. And that is what's universal. Does that make sense? So it's both social construct, but there's also traces of a kind of universal, non-constructed nature there, if that makes sense. Um, Seems like a silly question, but do you have any advice for trying to read through dense works and theories, or do we just get used to the register? Get used to it. I mean, take advantage of resources like search engines that can help clarify things. But the thing is, like, never go into a text thinking that the way you'll understand it that time should be the way you understand it for the rest of your life. I mean, the relationship we should have with text is that they're things you return to, they're iterative. I can read a text that I read 10 years ago, and I have a completely different interpretation of it. And it's important to think, like, to be easy with yourself, know that your relationship with a text is never going to be complete. Um, and while there are some, there's some things that you don't want to get wrong about any text, like, you want to make sure that you understand like the basics of it. There's a ton of room for just your understanding of it, what it means to you in your life. Um, yeah. Wanted to ask, how to start being a content creator in the field of natural sciences or even philosophy. I'm don't do what I'm doing. I mean, I've just done this for so long now that it's just kind of like picked up. I mean, in natural science, I think that if you put in a little bit of production effort to like create fun, um, videos and presentations, I think that can do you wonders. Uh-huh. Excuse me. But anything like that, I think would be great. You'd also, if you're offering information that people will find interesting, or do what I did and you go for content, not quality, or quantity, not quality. And I just made a lot of videos and eventually just kind of over 7, 8 years, it's grown to be like fairly sizable. I mean, Instagram's been like I mean, that kind of grew over because I forever for so long I was neglecting making Instagram videos. And I was just uploading the old ones I had on TikTok onto Instagram, and people on Instagram liked it for some reason. Um, yeah. Understand post-colonial studies. There's France Fanon. There's Annie Alumba's colonialism slash post-colonialism book, which isn't right here. Colonialism, post-colonialism book is really good. Gayatri Spivak's not bad. Aimé Césaire, the list goes on and on. Marx, understanding, or Lenin even, understanding imperialism, very important. Um, yeah. Do I think that Stoicism is inherently incompatible with postmodernism? Again, define these things is tricky, but off the bat, I don't think so. Uh, kind of think I don't think so. As a corollary to that, should we always accept dense language when we look at critical theory? Can this be something we can critique as well? Yeah, I mean, that's what I've been trying to do for years, is to show that you can understand this stuff without using the dense language. Like you can understand Deleuze or Hegel without the dense language. At the same time, I really think that, like, there's always gonna be something lost in translation there. There's always gonna be something lost when, you move away from the words the person was using, whether it's their specific language, whether it's their specific lexicon, like the specific words they're using, something will be lost. Like, it's hard to talk about Hegel without talking about, like, sublation or the negative or the notion. Like these are very complicated terms to understand and grapple, and they're hard things to explain. So there's always going to be something lost there, but I think that there is within philosophy, within theory circles, I think that there is a very strong desire to make it exclusive, to prevent people from having access to it, because then that's how people in those fields can maintain their sense of exceptionalism, their superiority, because they possess knowledge of the words. And then when it's convenient in arguments, they can draw upon the words to confuse their opponent. Men do this with women all the time. That like if they disagree, they'll just suddenly pull from their reservoir of words that they know their friend or partner, whoever they're talking to, doesn't know, in order to make them feel stupid or to put them down. So that's very much a part of this too. But yeah, I think it should be critiqued. Thank you. Do you think excessive intellectualism prevents real action? Yes, I do. Any suggestive text for getting into and fully understanding postmodernism? Anything that you read? You won't, because I just don't think it's like a thing that exists. Just read the people that are often associated with it. Like read Foucault. Start with Foucault's. I wouldn't start with Foucault's first books. Like I wouldn't start with the Order of Things. Uh, Maybe even the Archaeology of Knowledge is tough. Start with his institutional critiques, like of madness, like Madness and Civilization. I don't think you have to go and read the history of madness. It's a lot longer, but Madness and Civilization. Go and read Derrida. Read Derrida on I think dissemination is not a bad place to start with Derrida. It's not too complicated. Read Nietzsche. Read Nietzsche's Truth and Lying in a Non-Moral Sense. Read Nietzsche's Genealogy of Morality. Weird noise. Just go and read Judith Butler. You'll get all those people will give you a good idea. Thanks, physics guy. Zilly's on her way. She's on a pretty strict drug plan. Every few hours, I have to give her a lot of medication, but she's doing okay. She's really like loopy. She's like she can't really walk right, and she just kind of lies down all the time, which breaks my heart. But I know she needs it to. That's how she'll get better. Um, and I'm sorry I'm so like obtuse about the whole postmodernism thing. It's just something that once you read Deleuze and Baudrillard and Foucault, you find out that they don't have that much in common. And it's like, what is connecting these people? Excessive intellectualism. I think that there is. I think that there is excessive intellectualism. I think that like a lot of academics are like they aren't super active. They aren't the biggest activists. And I think that part of it is academics thinking that their minds are enough. Like whatever they know is enough. Yeah, like they know about all the harms of the world. That's enough. They can show up to meetings and just say their opinions, and that's enough. And that's not actually like organizing. And I think that it's in that case that excessive intellectualism gets in the way of movements. Peterson targets Marcuse and the essay Repressive Tolerance. I found the critique of pure tolerance on the street, and though it felt relevant to public conversation about speech and violence. I'm not sure I fully understand. Because in Repressive Tolerance, Marcuse writes about like the problem of like we accept all opinions because Marcuse is like, well, what about Nazis? Like, are we really going to be like, yeah, they should have a seat at the table? Like, no one would say that. No one thinks that. And hopefully soon enough, we will say the same thing about Israelis and their Zionism. But hopefully, but Peterson and other reactionary ding dongs are like, oh, they're against freedom of speech. Marcuse is against freedom of speech. When it's like, just we don't want Nazis around. Like, is that seems like something we can all agree on. Recently, what made me think the most is a book called The Politics of Piety. Have you heard about it? I haven't. I haven't read it. The dense language is kind of inevitable when you make up new concepts. I totally agree. I think that on some level, the language, it's hard to get past like some amount of exclusivity. You know, you're writing in a language first and foremost. Of course, not everyone's going to understand it. Um, but I think that there is still like room to make it as accessible as you can, like which I think is an activity and an exercise many people in that field don't do. They aren't being like, "How can I make this accessible?" They're just like, "I'm such a genius. I will write down my ideas and people will just they'll take it or leave it." Like, okay, there's a lot more to getting from that. I don't want to continue, but I've read some reviews of your lessons from when you used to teach at a university. They said you were talking a lot about unrelated topics from your life. Oh yeah. I mean, it's good to use. I like to use anecdotes. I find that they help me understand things, and I think they give people a kind of connection to the material. Uh, but that's my approach. Everyone has different ones they liked. Things are going okay, Elena. Thanks for asking. It seems the opposite. Wait, what was? I'm confused. God, the comments on the Instagram live are difficult to navigate. Um, is it the opposite of what you've just described with people using academic terms outside academia for their advantage? That's not really what I was talking about, though. I'm not talking about people using academic terms for their advantage. I'm talking about like excessive intellectualism is when like people see academic terms as just like their whole world. There's nothing beyond language. There's nothing more to do. Why Hegel seems not Christian enough to Kierkegaard is because for Kierkegaard, religion isn't just rational. There's some irrationality in it. For Hegel, Christianity is the most rational. I that- I think that makes sense. Makes sense to me. Kierkegaard might feel like Hegel's caging Christianity. That's true, to be honest. Sure. What is the best way you understand how to implement impactful theoretical ideas into your everyday life? Listen to people with a true, earnest effort in believing that what they're saying and doing is like with the best intention in mind, and everyone has knowledge. And being raised a dude, like it was, being socialized as a man. Um, one of the hardest things to overcome was like seeing women as being sites of possible knowledge, and it's a challenge that men like really struggle with in that they often just close off half the population from offering them knowledge, which has been one of the most significant things. And like engaging with feminist thought has really undone that for me, and that's one of the kind of my immediate response is like that's how it manifests in my life the most. What do you think about Zoran's win, or is it not that big of a deal from a left perspective? I mean, like, obviously, I'm skeptical. Obviously, I have a little bit of skepticism. I mean, it's a Democratic win, Democratic Party win. Like, how much longer are we gonna have faith in these parties to offer real change? With that being said, I'm like, well, let's wait and see. There people are very happy, excited about this. I love that. That's great, but I hope that he's able to follow through and making um, essentially following through with the harm reduction he's offering. He's not offering revolutionary overhaul, but he's offering harm reduction, which I think is good. Making groceries affordable, making housing affordable. good things. I hope that he's able to accomplish them. Thoughts on Mark Fisher? Mark Fisher's great. It's good stuff. I mean, I sometimes find it's a little bit like, oh, the kids these days, oh, technology these days, oh, capitalism these days. I find it kind of dehistoricized sometimes, and it just kind of translates into like a get off my lawn thing. I mean, I'm being very mean, uh, but yeah, Mark Fisher's fine. Mark Fisher's fine. I love when lecturers give personal anecdotes. Like you say, it helps give context as well as helps connect with the lecturer as a person when they happy to hear it. I mean, tends to work for me. Postmodernism, Braidoti and such. Do you know Andrew Filsfader? He just wrote a book called The Hysterical Sublime where he takes on that task. Or posthumanism. Yeah, I was like Braidoti. I mean, Braidoti is a postmodernist. Braidoti's a posthumanism book is just Deleuze. I mean, not just, but the posthuman is the name of her book, and she takes a very like metabolic Deleuze-Guattarian machinic approach to understanding the human and the post-human intervention. Um, yeah, so Braidoti is interesting. I mean, I mean, my master's degree was a critique of Braidoti, essentially, was a critique of Braidoti and most post-human approaches, because in offering this idea of the post-human, what they do, like inadvertently, is reify a historical notion of the human, where they're like, oh, well, we moved past the human now. And it's like, wait a second, are you implying as that we've ever had a human? Haven't we always been post-human? I mean, I think that is a sentence from one of those books. I think that might have been from N. Catherine Hales. I hope I'm not plagiarizing. But we've always been post-human. So we've never really been human. Point of academic research. I think academic research is still important. I think that doing theory, finding connections between experiences across history is valuable. I think that this helps to transform the personal into the political, where it's not like what individuals are experiencing, but instead recognizing that this is experienced by many people. And theory and doing academic research can help do that work. Is all academic research going to be doing that? No. Is the university as a structure right now participating in that? Not really. I mean, it's becoming more and more taken over by corporate interests, by industrial interests. So I mean, I'm not erasing those other parts of it. But if I'm just romanticizing what the role of research is and what it can do, that's what I would say. Um, how do you liberal voices in academia? It's tough, Rose. It's really tough. I mean, liberal mentality is really hard to get through because people often take that to be enough. They vote for the Democrats and then they're like, I've done enough. Like that's what it means to be. I mean, it's one of the great tricks in history has been convincing us that democracy, which translates to power to the people, is exercised by voting. When it's like, sure, I mean, that's one great way to exercise power, but that's not the only way. That's not the only way. There's so many other ways to exercise power. So yeah. Um, do you think a focus on action as a reaction to excessive intellectualism leads to preoccupation with activism, which is not necessarily the point? I think that, yeah, I think it's important to have some amount of wariness about activism for activism's sake, which is no way to undermine the role of activism, but it should be done with like, it should be informed by something, not just like knee-jerk reaction, which I think that Marx was really relevant in thinking about, in his offering scientific socialism as a response to the idealism and utopianism of the socialists before him, because they were like Proudhon and Wittling and others were like, oh, well, yeah, capitalism's bad, let's just make it better. And Marx is like, aren't you ignoring that it can't be made better? Like, it is a system that has split the world into two people, where one of those groups is getting significantly smaller and richer, and the other one's getting bigger and poorer. And that is the very structure of this world. It needs to be totally overhauled. Um, Donna Haraway's cool. The cyborg thing, I don't think I understand it, but it's cool. Politics of Piety, Mahmoud taking, oh, shoot, sorry. I lost it. From a resistance subject. That sounds really interesting. I should read it. Politics of Piety. Okay, folks, it's been an hour and 45, and my brain is getting a little fried. Thanks for tuning in. For those of you that contributed to my GoFundMe, I really appreciate it. It's been a real help, especially since I'm unemployed. Uh, so it was a big expense, and I really appreciate what everyone was able to contribute. But I hope that you are all doing well. And yeah, I don't know if you like this on Instagram. I do this on YouTube like twice a year. Um, but yeah, if you like it on Instagram, let me know. You know, with comments and stuff. I'd be willing to do it more often if you found it helpful. But yeah, I hope you're all taking care of yourselves. Um, and yeah, keep reading things, keep expanding your minds, and we will encounter one another again later. That note, oh, try to log off of Instagram here if I know to do it. Peace, everyone. And now sorry about the YouTube folks. I'm sorry the volume wasn't high enough. I don't know what the issue with that was. Oh, as I'm maybe yeah, I don't know why it was so low. Anyways, thanks for tuning in, YouTube folks. I'll see you later. Yes, she's on her way. Thanks, New Johns. Take care, everyone.